Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not a hero, a general, or even a man with options. You're a Roman Legionnaire stationed in the damp armpit of the Empire, Germania. You've spent the last few months soaked, shouted at, and slowly rotting in your sandals. But today your commander has decided to march 3 entire legions into a forest the locals keep warning you about. They call it cursed, you call it Tuesday, you won't survive it. Not because you're weak, but because bureaucracy is stronger. Before we descend into the trees, do me a small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's tuning in from around the world. If you'd like early access to more of these slow, crumbling tragedies, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You don't remember signing up for this. Technically, you did, of course. There was a ceremony, an oath, some shouting in Latin, a few coins pressed into your palm to make it all feel very dignified. But if anyone had bothered to mention Germania, the damp, endless, mosquito-ridden edge of nowhere, you might have reconsidered. Or at least insisted on dying somewhere with proper drainage. You are, in theory, a representative of Roman civilization, a proud cog in the grand imperial machine. In practice, you're a half-starved man in a rusting breastplate, standing knee-deep in mud, being glared at by a barefoot child with a stick. The locals do not love you. They do not admire your discipline, your engineering, or your command of subjunctive grammar. They squat in their longhouses, carve angry gods out of tree bark, and mutter curses whenever you pass. Sometimes they throw things, mostly dung. Your cohort arrived in late spring. The weather was optimistic then. Cool mornings, dry boots, even the illusion of sunlight filtering through the trees. That didn't last. Germania is a land of lies. The rivers are too wide, the forests too dark, and the rain, well, the rain arrives like an old debt collector. Constant, familiar, unforgiving. Your tent is never dry, your socks are always wet, and your feet at this point have the consistency of stewed figs. The fort, if you can call it that, was built in a hurry. A few ditches, some sharpened stakes, the usual facade of order. The officers pretend it's secure. You know better. The walls lean in when the wind picks up. The watchtowers creak. One collapsed last week, crushing the latrine. You try not to see that as an omen, but it's getting harder, especially since the replacement latrine is now just a trench with a curtain. And the curtain has holes. There's nothing to do but train. Marching drills in the mud, weapon drills in the mud, shouting matches about marching and weapons, also in the mud. Sometimes the centurion reads proclamations from Rome. They're full of grand words like honour and valour and frontier stability. You and your comrades listen politely, then return to your primary duties, shivering, cursing, and swatting flies the size of almonds. At night, you lie awake under your damp wool blanket and think about the things you miss. Olive oil that doesn't taste like regret. Bread that wasn't half ash. Baths. You remember the sound of fountains, of music, of people who didn't wear fur and stare at you like you're the intruder. Because here, you are. The Empire calls it expansion. The locals call it trespassing. You're beginning to see their point. And then there's Varus, Publius Quinctilius Varus, your governor, your general, your gleaming beacon of Roman certainty. He has the posture of a statue and the soul of an accountant. You've seen him once, atop a horse too clean for this region, delivering orders in a voice that suggests he's never seen a real forest or stepped in a puddle without screaming. He believes in paperwork, in tax records, in the civilizing power of tariffs. The man genuinely thinks the Germans can be reasoned with. If not with language, then with ledgers. You try not to think about Varus too much. It's safer that way. But his name comes up more and more lately, usually in whispers and with varying degrees of sarcasm. He's been talking about a show of strength, about reminding the tribes who's in charge, about pushing deeper into the territory, just a bit, just enough to send a message. You've heard this sort of talk before. It usually ends with someone losing a limb. The rumours start over breakfast, if it can be called that. A bowl of lukewarm gruel with the texture of regret. A junior officer, too loud for someone who's never seen combat, lets it slip that Varus has chosen a route. Through the forest, the Teutoburg forest. You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth. The others do too. No one says anything for a while. The name is enough. You've seen the trees from a distance, tall, gnarled, whispering things that blot out the sky. The locals don't enter, unless they must. Even the guides mutter prayers when they speak of it. The forest is old, older than Rome, older than roads. It doesn't want you there. Still the order comes. The legions will march, a demonstration of Rome's reach, of its power, of its inevitability. You're to carry your pack, your weapons, your optimism, what little remains of it, and follow Varus into the woods. You don't complain, not out loud. That's not how this works. You shoulder your gear, straighten your posture, and prepare to walk directly into a place that wants you dead. Because that's what you do. You're a Legionnaire. You're part of the greatest army the world has ever known. And tomorrow you'll begin dying very slowly. You wake before the horn sounds. The camp is unusually quiet for a morning of mobilization. Not the silence of discipline, but the heavy pause before something ill-advised. You dress in the usual routine. Linen tunic, half-dry armour, sandals that have long since accepted their fate. Your gear is exactly as you left it the night before, because there's no point checking anymore. If anything's missing, it wasn't important. By the time you reach the assembly point, the fog is lifting off the camp in slow sheets, like the place itself is trying to disappear. 3 full legions are being organised, which in theory means order and precision. In practice, it means shouting, missing mules, and someone tripping over a pile of unsecured javelins. You wait in formation for an hour, while an officer counts, and recounts the same row of men 3 times. He insists someone is missing. No one is. You suggest he recount himself. Then Varus arrives, or more accurately, Varus emerges, astride a horse far too pristine for the terrain. Robes spotless, face composed in the way only a man with 0 field experience can manage. He looks as though he's delivering a speech in the Senate, not leading a column into a forest that eats men like bread. The centurions call the men to attention. You stiffen your spine and do your best not to groan aloud. Varus begins. It's the usual mix of bravado and public relations, the strength of Rome, the importance of law, the civilizing mission. He speaks of honour, of duty, of making an impression on the local tribes. He says pacification 3 times. You suspect he doesn't know what that word means outside a census report. He reminds you that you are Rome's finest, the tip of the spear, a living symbol of imperial destiny. You watch a nearby soldier suppress a yawn with the discipline of a man who's been flogged before. The speech drags. A few men shift their weight. Someone coughs. The sun rises higher, already beginning to burn off the mist, revealing the sheer volume of supplies still being strapped to animals that don't look up to the task. You count at least 3 wagons already listing from uneven loading. One of them contains nothing but amphorae of olive oil. Another holds scrolls. There's no food in either. When the speech finally ends, Varus gives a crisp nod and rides to the front of the column. No mud touches his boots. You're not sure he knows what mud is? You half expect him to announce that he'll be travelling by litter. Instead, he gestures forward, as if the path will part like the Red Sea. The first units begin to march. You hoist your pack, settle your shield, and take your place among the shuffling mass of bodies, beasts, and bad decisions. The column stretches long, far too long. Legions, auxiliaries, camp followers, baggage trains, engineers, carts groaning under bureaucratic optimism. It's not a military manoeuvre, It's a civic parade, stretched thin through a wilderness that doesn't want it. The scouts, what few remain, ride out ahead. The guides, Germans of course, walk with suspicious confidence. You try not to make eye contact. Some of them are smiling. The forest begins slowly. At first, just patches of trees at the edge of open ground. You've marched through worse, but the terrain closes in. The trees lean toward the path, thickening into walls of bark and shadow. The road, if it can be called that, is barely wide enough for 2 carts side by side. When it rains, which it always does, it becomes a trench. When it doesn't, it's worse, sucking at your feet like wet bread. You notice how quickly the sounds change. No birds, no wind. Just the creak of leather, the clink of armour, the wet slap of sandals in muck. The further you go, the more the air feels stale, as if the forest is holding its breath. The canopy closes overhead, and the sunlight becomes a filtered, uncertain thing, a rumour of warmth without the promise. Someone makes a joke, something about how the trees are thinner in Gaul. You laugh briefly. The man behind you chuckles. Then the laughter dies, absorbed by the moss and the mist, and the fact that Varus is still riding like this is a formality, a routine patrol through conquered land. He waves occasionally, as if anyone can see him through the foliage. The order is to maintain formation, to keep pace, but the terrain makes that impossible. The line stretches, bends, bottlenecks, units become disjointed. Officers bark corrections that echo strangely off the trees. You lose sight of the standards after an hour. You stop trying to follow the line after 2. By midday, your shoulders ache. Your feet are already raw. The pack animals protest every incline, and several have to be pulled free of muddy sinkholes. One dies outright. The body is left by the side of the trail, eyes wide, legs splayed at unnatural angles. A few soldiers mutter a brief prayer. Most just step around it. When you finally glance behind, the camp is gone. The open ground is gone. The sky is mostly gone. There's only the path, the trees, and the sound of too many men pretending they're not getting nervous. Varus rides ahead, untouchable as ever. You trudge forward, a single bead of sweat trailing down your spine. The last of the sunlight flickers through the canopy like a goodbye. You've entered the Teutoburg forest. You do not know it yet, but you're not coming back out. It starts with a drizzle. Not dramatic, not even particularly inconvenient. Just a soft, steady mist that clings to your skin and dampens your cloak. You shrug it off. You've marched in worse. Everyone has. But this rain doesn't pass. It thickens, slowly, until the air itself feels sodden. The droplets find their way into everything. The folds of your tunic, the gaps between your armour plates, the inside of your ears. You begin to wonder if you've always been damp and simply never noticed. By midday, the march has turned into a collective squelch. Every step is a small argument with the road, which is quickly becoming less road and more viscous suggestion. Sandals slide sideways in the mud. Horses lose footing. Carts begin to tilt with a worrying frequency. Your feet ache from gripping the ground just to stay upright. Someone near you mutters that their left foot has developed its own ecosystem. You believe them. The rain continues into the evening. You don't bother setting up a proper camp because there's nowhere dry to sleep, nothing dry to sleep on, and no officer with the willpower to enforce standards anymore. You huddle under your cloak, which is about as effective as a wet napkin, and pretend to sleep. The sounds of the forest are drowned out by the constant patter of rain hitting leather, wood, skin. Every so often, you hear a cart tipping over in the distance, followed by swearing and a splash. By morning, the damage is visible. Several carts have collapsed under their own weight, their wheels sunk deep into the mud. 2 mules have died overnight, likely from exhaustion or exposure. The men try to push one of the wagons free, but it only sinks deeper, as if the forest itself is swallowing it whole. You're ordered to redistribute the supplies by hand. No one argues. Arguments require energy, and energy requires calories you haven't had. Breakfast is a half ration of stale biscuits soaked in rainwater. You chew slowly to avoid cracking a tooth. Someone nearby jokes that it tastes better this way, easier to digest. Another soldier chimes in that it's probably fermenting, and that if you wait a few days, it might become wine. Everyone laughs more than they should. You suspect that if you stopped laughing, you'd start screaming instead. Your clothes haven't been dry in 2 days. Your feet are beginning to rot. You examine them during a rest stop and find the skin around your toes has gone soft, pale, and disturbingly squishy. One man's foot slips clean out of his sandal when the leather strap gives way, and the resulting splash coats half the nearby unit in filth. No one yells. They just sigh and wipe their faces with sleeves already soaked through. You're not sure whether this is discipline or resignation. The rain is heavier now, thick, cold, relentless. It runs down your helmet in streams, pools in your sleeves, collects at the base of your spine. Every piece of clothing you own clings like regret. Your shield arm aches from carrying the extra weight of waterlogged wood. The leather strap has started to rub raw through the tunic, and you wince every time it shifts. The engineers, or what's left of them, try to shore up the worst sections of trail with planks and brush. It doesn't help. The forest eats everything. One section of the path has turned into a bog, swallowing a supply cart completely. They tried to salvage the cargo at first until someone slipped under and didn't come back up for a while. He did resurface eventually, coughing, pale, shaking. He won't stop muttering about something grabbing his leg. You assume it was just a route, but you avoid that part of the trail anyway. There are no proper fires. No one can get anything to catch, and the few attempts at warmth result in clouds of smoke that hang low in the wet air, stinging eyes and inviting curses. Even the standard bearers look miserable. The flags droop like wet laundry, the colours muted by filth. Rome's glory dulled by weather. Discipline begins to slip in small ways. Helmets go unworn. Orders are passed along with a shrug. When an officer tries to enforce marching formation, the soldiers simply pretend they can't hear him over the rain. They're not lying. The rain is louder than shouting. It drums on armour, bounces off helmets, turns every command into an unintelligible splash of syllables. The guides still walk confidently, somehow. Their cloaks are drenched, their beards drip constantly, but they seem unbothered. You've begun to hate them. They move with an ease you can't replicate, speaking in short phrases that make the legionaries nervous. You don't know the words, but you recognise the tone. Amusement. You're the punchline to a joke you can't understand. By the third day of marching in this weather, something fundamental shifts. You stop expecting to be dry again. You stop fantasizing about baths or sun or wine. Now you fantasize about flat ground, about bread that doesn't dissolve in your hand, about sleep that isn't interrupted by your own shivering. One soldier swears he saw a fish swimming in a puddle near his tent. Another claims his boots have become sentient and are actively trying to kill him. No one laughs anymore. The mud grows deeper. It no longer just slows you. It pulls at you, like a grasping hand. You help push a wagon uphill, only to watch the axle snap under the strain. The cart rolls sideways, tipping its contents into the muck. Amphorae shatter. Tools vanish beneath the surface. The officer in charge says nothing. He just stares at the broken wood, rain streaking down his face, and turns away. You keep marching. You don't know why. Forward is the only direction that still exists. Progress becomes something you measure in footsteps, not miles, not hours. Just the quiet, stubborn rhythm of one leg in front of the other, each step slightly more reluctant than the last. The column crawls forward, if you can call it that. The mud deepens, the trees press tighter, and what once resembled a road now feels like a suggestion. Half memory, half mistake. No one knows where you are anymore. Not precisely. The officers still pretend otherwise, pointing at maps that have dissolved into damp parchment and gesturing with the conviction of men who think confidence is a substitute for clarity. The local guides are less theatrical. They squint at the tree line, mutter to each other, and occasionally change direction without warning. You watch them carefully. At first it was curiosity. Now it's something else. The way they exchange glances, the way they keep smiling at nothing, the way they never, ever seem lost. You try not to dwell on it. You try not to think too much about the twisting paths, the repeated landmarks, the feeling that the same bent tree has passed your right shoulder, twice in the same hour. But it's there, gnawing at the back of your mind like a rat in the grain stores. You're not trained for this kind of terrain. No one is. Rome builds roads for a reason. Straight lines, predictable progress, logic. Germania has no interest in logic. It has mist and moss and paths that double back on themselves, like they're trying to escape. By the 5th day, the column has split more than once, not by intent, just by geography. A narrow pass, a fallen tree, a flooded bend, and suddenly one legion is 2. The messengers keep running up and down the line, passing orders that contradict the ones before them. Half the carts have gone missing. Most of the officers claim this is expected. Some even sound like they believe it. Tension grows like mould in a sealed tent. You feel it in the way men snap at each other over nothing. A jostled elbow, a dropped tool, a muttered complaint. Any of it can lead to shouting now. Fists, occasionally. Discipline hasn't broken, but it's starting to bend. The rain stopped briefly, only to be replaced by a sticky fog that makes every breath feel like inhaling through a wet cloth. You're beginning to forget what sun looks like. You're not alone in that. One afternoon, you pass a small clearing that looks familiar. Too familiar. A distinctive tree, split trunk, hanging moss, a patch of red fungi clinging to the base. You passed it yesterday. You're certain. You say nothing. So does the man next to you, but the silence between you is heavy. The kind that confirms everything without a word. Even the animals are growing anxious. The mules balk at nothing, ears twitching towards sounds you can't hear. Horses stumble more often now, even on flat ground. One rears suddenly and throws its rider into the muck. No one helps him up. He lies there for a while, coughing, then slowly stands without speaking. His eyes are wrong. Not scared, not angry, just dulled. You try to keep your mind focused. Basic drills, marching cadence, anything to stay tethered. But the forest plays tricks. Distances shift. Sounds echo in strange directions. Someone swears they heard a horn ahead. Another insists it was behind. The officers tell you to keep moving. You do, though the line is fraying. Then come the rumours. A patrol hasn't returned. A messenger missed his rendezvous. One of the guides wandered off during a rest break and hasn't come back. Officially, it's nothing. Delays, miscommunication, unfortunate timing. Unofficially, the campfire conversations are getting darker. Whispers that the Germans aren't guiding you anywhere. They're leading you in circles, slowing you down, feeding you to the forest piece by piece. You keep your suspicions quiet, but they throb behind your temples like a pressure you can't release. You start checking your gear twice, then 3 times. You sleep with your hand on your gladius, even when the mud makes it impossible to draw quickly. You glance over your shoulder more than you should. You're not afraid of an attack. Not exactly. It's something else. Something quieter, like the forest is watching, and it's getting impatient. Then, during the march, a scout fails to return. One of your own this time. A boy really, young, fast, good eyes. Sent ahead to check a fork in the trail. He never comes back. At first there's the usual waiting, the usual excuses. Maybe he took a long route. Maybe he doubled back. Maybe he got delayed by weather. But the truth settles quickly. He's gone. The centurion sends another man after him. Then 2. All return empty-handed. No sign of a struggle, no tracks. Just silence and the unsettling feeling that you never really had a direction in the first place. No one says the word ambush, not yet. but it's hanging in the air like smoke. That night, the guards double the perimeter. Torches burn lower. Conversations taper off. You don't ask about the missing scout. You don't say his name. You don't even pretend to wonder what happened. You sleep in shifts now, though calling it sleep is generous. It's more like closing your eyes and hoping the forest lets you forget where you are for a while. The rain has thinned to a mist that clings to every surface, but the damp is permanent. Everything smells faintly of mildew. Your blanket, your gear, your own skin. You curl into yourself, spine aching, boots still on, sword within reach, and try to pretend that the rustling outside the camp perimeter is just wind. It isn't. You know it isn't. There's wind, yes, but there are also twigs snapping under deliberate weight, branches shifting in patterns that feel purposeful. Sometimes it's birds, or at least you tell yourself it is. Other times the noise is too steady, too paced, footfalls maybe, or something close enough to pass for them. You ask the sentries in the morning if they saw anything. They all say no, every single one, but none of them look you in the eye. The fire doesn't burn properly anymore. Everything's too wet. You try to dry your cloak near the coals, and it just steams uselessly, never quite warming. The men have stopped bothering with proper rotations. Half the time, the same pair of eyes stay on watch because no one has the strength to argue about whose turn it is. You suspect your centurion knows this and has decided to pretend otherwise. He walks the camp with his usual scowl, barking orders with a voice gone hoarse, but even he looks thinner, gaunter, like the trees are sucking the marrow from his bones. The dreams are getting worse. You don't remember falling asleep. Not really, but you wake gasping, your fingers clenched around your sword hilt and your throat tight. You dreamed of marching through the same patch of forest for days, of your legs sinking into the mud up to the knee, while everyone else moved forward without noticing, or of trees that whispered in your language, except the words were wrong, rearranged, twisted, like Latin through a cracked mirror. You hear the others muttering in their sleep. Names sometimes, commands from drills, occasionally please. One man wakes screaming and won't explain what he saw. Another stares at the tree line for hours afterward, lips moving soundlessly. Someone begins drawing symbols in the mud, circles and lines that look like unit formations, except none of them match anything you've learned. He insists it's for protection. He won't stop unless you drag him away. The food is running low again. That doesn't surprise you. Nothing does anymore. Rations are cut further, and even the officers don't argue. The bread is soggy and cold. The dried meat tastes like bark. You chew slowly, mechanically, just enough to keep the ache in your stomach from becoming a distraction. No one bothers to ask where the supply wagons have gone. You all know the answer. The mud got them, or the forest did. Morale isn't declining, it's just dissolving. One moment it's there, the next it's gone. Like breath in cold air. You can feel it thinning, the way a fabric stretches before it tears. The jokes stop first, then the small talk, then even the arguments. You begin to realise how much energy anger requires, and how little anyone has left to spend on it. Now when a man trips and falls, no one laughs. No one helps him up either. During one of your night shifts, you think you see something moving between the trees. Not a shape exactly, but a pattern of darkness against darker darkness. Something too smooth, too fast. You blink and it's gone. You tell yourself it was a trick of the eyes, that your mind is playing games again. You don't mention it to anyone else. Neither do the other watchmen, but you know they've seen things too. The silence between you confirms it. The next morning you wake to shouting. Not alarm, not yet. Just confusion. Someone's missing again. A veteran this time. Quiet, competent. The sort of man who doesn't wander off. His bedroll is still there, blanket undisturbed. His gear is gone. You all pretend that means something. That maybe he went out to relieve himself and got turned around. That maybe he'll stumble back through the brush and laugh about it. But no one really believes that. The officers organise a search, though no one expects success. 2 men go out with torches and come back an hour later, empty-handed and pale. One of them vomits near the edge of camp. He doesn't say what he saw, you're told not to ask. That night, you sleep for maybe an hour, curled beneath your cloak and listening for footsteps. When you wake, it's still dark. The mist hangs low and heavy. You sit up slowly, joints aching, and try to shake off the dream that clings like cobwebs. Something about trees with faces. Something about eyes in the bark. Then someone screams, a real scream, not a dream, not a memory, sharp and immediate, cutting through the fog. You bolt upright, hand on your sword, and stumble toward the noise along with half the camp. What you find stops you cold. A body, one of your own, stripped of armour hanging from a tree, limbs arranged like some grotesque offering. His eyes are open, his mouth too. His face is twisted into something that might be surprise or agony or both. A spear is driven clean through his chest, pinning him upright against the trunk. Blood, though you can barely see it in the mist, drips in slow, deliberate lines. The tree behind him seems to breathe. No one moves, no one speaks. The forest is absolutely still. Then your centurion clears his throat quietly, orders the body to be cut down. No ceremony, no rites, no time. The rest of you are told to eat quickly and move. You nod, you obey. You pack up your things like a man folding someone else's clothes. You try not to look at the tree again. But you know it saw you. The morning arrives without colour. The mist doesn't lift. It thickens. It clings to your arms, settles in your mouth, coats the inside of your nose with damp and decay. The world is quiet in a way that feels staged. No birds, no insects, just the creak of armour and the heavy exhale of men who no longer pretend this is a normal march. The line reforms sluggishly, shoulders hunched and eyes down. Even the officers speak in lower voices now, as if the trees might overhear. The fog swallows everything beyond 10 paces. The men in front of you are silhouettes. The ones behind might as well not exist. The standard is somewhere ahead, but the colours are dulled and wet, sagging under their own weight. You walk in rhythm, out of habit, not direction. It would be easy to drift off course and vanish entirely. One wrong turn, and you'd become a missing person, whose name is mispronounced in a monthly report. You hear something, a crack that doesn't belong, a dry branch somewhere in the mist to your left. You stop walking for just a breath. It's not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. A few men glance around, then keep moving. You do the same, though your hand now rests on the hilt of your gladius. Your heartbeat has picked up. You tell yourself it's fine. You tell yourself it's just the forest. Then the screaming starts. It's not close, not yet. Somewhere toward the front of the column, a shout, a clash, a wordless wail that tears through the fog like a hot knife through wax. You freeze. Everyone does. Shields are raised instinctively, eyes darting, feet bracing for orders that don't come. You hear someone whisper a prayer. You can't tell who. The javelins fall like rain. There's no warning, no horn, just the whistle of wood slicing air and the sick, wet thud of impact. Men fall. Some die before they hit the ground. One is struck clean through the throat, gurgling as he collapses. Another takes a spear to the thigh and starts shrieking until someone kicks him quiet. You see none of it clearly, just flashes through the mist, movements without form, shapes stumbling and disappearing. Officers shout orders that vanish into the fog. Formations are attempted, then immediately unravel. The road is too narrow, the trees too close. You can't move as a unit. You can barely move at all. A man near you throws a pilum at nothing. Another turns to run, slips in the mud, and disappears beneath someone else's boots. You try to hold your line, but there is no line anymore, only noise. You pivot in place, shield raised, sword out, breath shallow. You can hear the fighting but not see it. Steel against wood. Screams in Latin and something guttural and Germanic. The trees distort it all. Echoes bounce in the wrong direction. Footsteps seem to circle you. You don't know where the enemy is. You don't know where your own cohort is. You barely know where you are. A shape emerges from the mist, friend or foe, you can't tell. You hesitate a moment too long. It's one of yours, blood streaking down his leg, eyes wild. He grabs your shoulder, says something incoherent, and vanishes again into the trees. You don't follow. You wouldn't know which way to go, even if you wanted to. Another javelin lands inches from your foot, sinking deep into the muck. You jump without meaning to, adrenaline overriding discipline. You spin around and nearly stab your own tent mate, who curses and pushes past you. You try to regroup, to reorient, but the forest makes everything unfamiliar. What little trail there was has been trampled to oblivion. The only thing you're certain of is that you're in the wrong place. You catch a glimpse of someone, maybe a German, maybe not, through the trees, just far enough away to make you doubt your own eyes. They don't advance. They vanish instead. That's the worst part. There's no charge, no rush, just constant, deliberate disappearance, like the forest is spitting them out only to swallow them again, letting you know they're there but never long enough to strike back. The fog plays tricks. You swear you hear fighting to the right, but when you turn, it's quiet. You hear running feet behind you, but when you spin around, there's only stillness. You try to call out, just a name, any name, but your voice dies in the mist, swallowed before it can go 3 steps. You're alone, surrounded by men, weapons, noise, but utterly alone. You begin to move, not toward anything, just away from the noise, from the bodies, from the place where the air smells like blood and moss. Your boots sink with each step. You trip on a root, catch yourself, keep moving. You don't know how far you go. You don't know how many others are doing the same. Eventually you stop. Your legs tremble. Your breath is ragged. You turn in a slow circle, trying to find a familiar face, a familiar tree, anything. But there's nothing. No formation. No command. No Varus. Just fog, silence, and the knowledge that you have lost the line. You're a Roman Legionnaire. You trained for years. You were taught how to hold formation, how to resist cavalry, how to build a road in the wilderness. But no one trained you to fight shadows between trees. No one taught you how to keep calm when the sky disappears and the ground slips out from under you. You don't know where your unit is. You don't know if it still exists. You move because standing still feels like drowning. Your boots drag through the muck, legs aching, lungs tight with damp air, and panic you're trying very hard not to name. The trees seem to have grown closer somehow. The path, if it ever was one, has melted into underbrush and roots. There's no direction anymore, just forward, whichever way that happens to be at the moment. You're not sure what you're trying to find. A cohort? A command tent? A road that leads out of this nightmare? You'd settle for a familiar face. Now and then, you spot others through the mist, shapes mostly, sometimes armoured, sometimes not. You call out once, quietly, just in case, but get no answer. One figure hears you, turns and bolts into the undergrowth like a startled deer. You don't follow. You understand the instinct too well. If someone called your name right now, you're not sure you'd answer either. You pass a corpse face down in a puddle. Roman. His armour's been stripped, but the sandals are regulation. A javelin shaft sticks out of the mud beside him, like a marker stone. You don't stop. There's no time. No one tells you that part of training, when to stop caring. But it happens all the same. Somewhere between the first scream and the second silence, you stopped counting the dead. Eventually, you find others. Not many. 4 men, scattered across the underbrush, all with the same wild look in their eyes. You recognize one of them. He was in your unit. You don't remember his name, only that he snored like a thunderstorm and used to complain about the camp's lentils. He clutches a broken pilum like it's a lucky charm. Another man has no shield. Another is limping. You glance around and realize they're all looking at you like maybe you've got a plan. You don't, but you nod, and they nod back because pretending is all you've got left. You whisper something about regrouping, about finding the main body of the Legion. No one argues, no one offers a better idea. One of the men keeps glancing behind him every few seconds. You try not to ask what he's looking for. You form something resembling a formation, not tight, not disciplined, just close enough that you can see each other through the trees. You move slowly, cautiously, weapons out, heads low. Every snapping twig sets teeth on edge. Every gust of wind raises your shield instinctively. The fog still hangs like a curtain over everything. You keep thinking you hear footsteps behind you, or ahead, or both. The forest doesn't end, it just shifts. The trees grow thicker, then thinner, then thicker again. The ground rises and falls without warning. You try to walk in a straight line, but the terrain laughs at the idea. You lose track of time. Your feet sting. Your shoulders burn from the weight of your pack. Your sword arm cramps. You keep walking anyway. One of the men suggests finding higher ground. You try. It turns out higher ground just means wetter wind. The elevation helps nothing. You see no banners, no smoke, no camps. Just more trees, more fog. The silence feels manufactured, intentional, like the forest is waiting for something. You come across another body, older this time, bloated from rain. The stench hits first, then the recognition. One of the scouts, maybe. His eyes are missing. The others don't comment. You keep moving, each of you silently deciding not to look too long. You've started to understand what cowardice really means. It's not running, it's pausing long enough to feel anything. The light is fading again. You're not sure if it's evening or just another patch of denser fog. You gather in a hollow to rest, backs against damp tree trunks, weapons still in hand. Someone pulls out a piece of dried meat and breaks it into 4 pieces. No one complains about the size. It's not hunger that's gnawing at you now. It's uncertainty, the kind that settles into your bones and won't leave. You're debating whether to move again or hunker down for nightfall when you hear it. That same crack, sharp, purposeful, from somewhere just beyond the edge of sight. Everyone freezes. The fog swirls. A bird calls once, then goes quiet. Then the javelins fall again. One strikes the man beside you in the shoulder. He goes down hard, gasping. Another embeds in the dirt inches from your knee. You throw yourself sideways, landing hard, scrambling for cover behind a fallen tree. The others scatter. No orders, no cohesion, just instinct, just raw animal terror. You catch glimpses of the attackers, bare-chested figures, darting between trunks, flinging weapons with practiced ease. You swing blindly, hitting nothing. Someone yells for a retreat, but there's nowhere to go. The forest isn't a battlefield, it's a trap. You lose sight of the others almost immediately. In the chaos, the fog becomes a wall again. You're running, ducking, slipping in mud and leaves, heart pounding loud enough to drown out thought. You trip on a root, fall hard, and crawl behind a tree, chest heaving. You don't know if you're alone. You don't know if you're surrounded. All you know is that the forest has swallowed the rest. Again, you don't remember how long you wander after the ambush. It could be hours, it could be days. The forest eats time the same way it eats light. Slowly at first, then all at once. Eventually, by dumb luck or divine mockery, you stumble into a cluster of Romans who look only marginally less lost than you. One of them recognizes your face. Another mutters something about regrouping with command. The words Varus and camp pass between cracked lips, like they still mean something. You follow them not because you believe it'll help, but because it's better than being alone again. The group moves slowly, cautiously, with the kind of hollow-eyed silence that suggests no one wants to be the first to admit this isn't going to end well. Your feet are numb. Your armour has begun to rust against your skin. You're fairly certain one of your toes is rotting, but you haven't had the energy to check. And then, there he is, Publius Quinctilius Varus, standing in the middle of what someone clearly intended to be a command post. A few banners remain upright, their fabric waterlogged and drooping like dead birds. The standard bearers look exhausted, eyes darting at every sound. The ground is churned and splintered, either from frantic activity or a brief skirmish. It's hard to tell. Most of the wagons are gone. The rest are half unloaded, their contents strewn across the mud in patterns that might once have been called logistics. But Varus, he looks composed, not pristine, no one is that deluded, but upright, focused, clean enough to make you suspicious. He's issuing orders in that same smooth voice, clipped and confident, as though he's managing a minor supply delay rather than the disintegration of 3 legions. You stand there, soaked and filthy, staring at this man like he's just wandered in from a different world. He glances over at you, nods and says something encouraging. You don't hear it. Your brain is too busy trying to reconcile the sound of optimism with the smell of rot. Around you, the camp is chaos wearing the uniform of organisation. Officers pass reports up the chain, but no one's quite sure who's actually in charge anymore. Some of them are just shouting into the void to feel like they're contributing. One man is arguing about terrain charts. Another is demanding a full head count despite the fact that no one's seen half their unit since yesterday. Varus paces like he's solving a riddle. He stops periodically to ask about flanking positions, supply reserves, marching formations. At one point, he gathers the remaining tribunes and delivers what might be generously described as a motivational address. He says the situation is fluid, that they've encountered resistance, yes, but it's nothing the discipline of Rome cannot overcome. Someone in the back coughs in disbelief. No one addresses it. You're pulled aside by a junior officer who orders you to help repair a palisade wall. You stare at him, then at the pile of broken stakes he's pointing to, then back at him. There's no wall. There's barely a perimeter, but you nod anyway, because saying "what's the point" isn't standard protocol. Every so often, you hear distant sounds, movement in the trees, sharp cracks that might be weapons, or might be branches giving way under unseen feet. Varus hears them too, but he doesn't flinch. He simply adjusts his cloak and continues talking about supply lines. One of his aides starts counting rations. You wonder what they think they're planning for. Eventually, someone suggests a retreat. Not aloud, not in front of Varus, but quietly, near the fire pit, while pretending to inspect a map. You overhear it and feel something like relief start to bloom in your chest. Not hope, never that again, but practicality. A step toward survival, even if it's just a smaller death. But then Varus announces his decision. Not a retreat to open ground. Not a fall back to Roman forts across the Rhine. No, he's going through, deeper into the forest. He believes the enemy is ahead, and by pushing forward, they can break through the ambush and re-establish momentum. He calls it a tactical withdrawal toward advantage. You nearly laugh. It comes out as a choked snort. No one comments. The orders go out quickly. Pack up the remaining supplies. Burn what can't be carried. Form ranks. Keep moving. Varus speaks of honour, of precedent, of Rome. He invokes Caesar, Augustus, Mars himself. You hear it all like it's echoing from the bottom of a well. The soldiers react the only way they can, by complying. Not because they believe. Belief left with the last coherent sunrise. They obey because structure is all that's left. Moving is easier than thinking. And Varus, for all his delusions, still sounds like a general. That's enough for now. You tighten your armour straps, rewrap your feet, adjust your grip on the sword that's already claimed more bark than blood. Around you, the Legion begins its descent into the unknown, once again. Muddy, dishevelled, splintered, but still technically a legion. Varus mounts his horse, gives one last nod, and just like that, you're marching again. Deeper into the forest, the rations don't run out all at once, they just shrink. First it's smaller portions, then thinner broth, then no broth. The dried beans last longer than you expect, but only because chewing them feels like eating pebbles. Bread goes next, The mould gets scraped off until someone shrugs and stops scraping. It's all the same once you're starving. You eat what's left in silence. No one bothers with grace or ritual. Meals are mechanical now, something to keep your hands moving and your stomach from turning in on itself. When the food is finally gone, there's no announcement, no speech, just the quiet realization that the crates are empty and the foraging parties haven't returned. Someone mutters that maybe they found something edible and decided not to share. Everyone pretends to believe that. You stop marching so much as stumbling forward. The mud is thicker than ever, the air colder, and every part of your body aches with a kind of bone-deep fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. Not that you get much of that anymore. You sleep in brief fits, eyes half open, blade near your side, stomach growling loud enough to wake you. No one talks about hunger. It becomes like the weather, ever-present, useless to complain about. You think of food constantly, but only in fragments. Dates, olives, warm barley with honey. You remember a peach once soft and sweet, and for a moment you can almost taste it. Then you remember the last thing you actually ate, which was a strip of dried meat so tough it ripped part of your molar out. The animals went quiet first, then they went missing. Some wandered off, others were taken. There are rumours, always whispered, that someone slit a mule's throat in the night and shared the meat between 5 men. You don't ask if it's true. You don't want to know how far you'd be willing to go if it is. The weakest start to fall behind, one at a time, then in pairs. At first, someone always tries to help, looping an arm around a shoulder, dragging a fellow soldier through the sludge. But that takes energy, and energy is the most precious thing left. Eventually, the attempts stop. The falling behind becomes permanent. Those who can't keep pace are simply gone the next morning. You try to convince yourself they slipped away in the dark, found their own route, maybe even escaped, but you don't believe that. No one does. You just stop turning around when you hear a cry behind you. If it were important, someone else would do something. The commanders still issue orders, though they're thinner now. Both the men and the instructions. Keep moving. Eyes up. Stay with your unit. You haven't seen your full unit in days, maybe weeks. You walk with whoever's nearby. Most of them don't speak anymore. One mumbles to himself constantly, a string of Latin phrases that loop endlessly like a broken prayer wheel. You try not to think about how much weight you've lost. Your belt fits differently. Your tunic hangs loose. Your arms look unfamiliar. At one point, you bend down to tighten a strap and feel dizzy just from standing back up. The world blurs. You see stars in the daylight. You tell yourself it's just exhaustion. One night someone stumbles into camp carrying a dead bird. No one asks where it came from. Feathers are plucked. The meat is stretched. You get a bite the size of a coin. It tastes like ash and victory. Later, someone vomits. No one connects the two. Sleep comes harder each night. Your body is too cold, too wired, too hollow to rest properly. You lie still and watch the treetops shift in the breeze. You wonder how long a person can go without food before the mind gives out. You wonder if it already has. You see things sometimes. Faces in the leaves, shadows darting between branches. You no longer bother blinking them away. You dream about feasts, long tables, roasted meat, salt, always salt. You wake up chewing nothing. Once you wake with your hand halfway to your mouth and realise you are trying to eat part of your own cloak. The man beside you dies sometime during the night. You don't hear it happen. No gasping, no choking, no struggle. Just silence. When you roll over in the morning, he's still lying there, eyes open, mouth parted like he was mid-sentence. You nudge him once, twice, nothing. He was a friend once, not close, not family, but familiar. You remember drinking with him in the early days of the campaign. He used to hum during marches, always off-key, always cheerful. You can't remember his name right away. You try to, but it doesn't come. Only the sound of his voice, humming that same tune. You tell the nearest officer. He nods, distracted, and waves someone over to drag the body away from the path. No one suggests burial. There's no ceremony. The ground is too hard, the shovels too few, and the will to care has dried up with everything else. You don't cry. No one does. You haven't seen tears in days. The body is just another thing to step around. Another piece of proof that you're all becoming something less than human, one sunless day at a time. You shoulder your pack. What's left of it? You fall back into line. What's left of that? And you keep walking, because hunger marches too. They start falling behind after the second week. Not just the starving, but the wounded. Those with broken legs, infected arms, arrow wounds gone too long without tending. The kinds of injuries a functioning army might treat. Might even mend, but you're not in a functioning army anymore. You're in a line of ghosts that haven't noticed they're dead yet. At first there's a system, a rotation of stretcher bearers, shared litters cobbled together from cloaks and spear shafts. You even see a few officers trying to coordinate rest intervals, trying to calculate how many hours slower the column can afford to move if it means saving one more man. But the forest doesn't allow for math, and the weight of dying men is heavier than it looks. Soon the litters are abandoned. The injured walk if they can, crawl if they must. Those who can't are given a skin of water and a last look before the column moves on. No one calls it abandonment. Not out loud, they call it necessity. You hear one centurion say the words, "no choice," 3 times in the span of a single breath. It's not an order so much as a mantra. Varus doesn't look back. His horse is still alive somehow, still stepping carefully through the muck like it believes it's being watched. He rides at the front now, flanked by the remnants of his honour guard, men who look less like soldiers and more like furniture, stiff, silent, splintering slowly. You watch one of the wounded try to stand. His leg is wrapped in what was once a tunic sleeve, soaked through and dark with something that no longer looks like blood. He grits his teeth and pulls himself upright, only to collapse again before he can take 2 steps. He doesn't cry out, doesn't beg, he just stops trying. You watch for another moment, then keep walking. That's how it is now. No one counts the bodies anymore. There's no roll call, no casualty lists. Those were luxuries from another life, back when death had names and records. Now the dead are part of the terrain, like fallen branches or sinkholes. You don't speak of them because there are too many, and because there's no comfort in naming what can't be helped. At one point someone suggests stopping for half a day to let the stragglers catch up. The officer he tells doesn't even bother to respond, just stares at him, blank and unmoving, like the idea never registered. You realise then that there is no plan anymore. There's only momentum, forward movement for its own sake, like if you all just keep walking long enough, the forest will get bored and spit you out. You see the same faces less and less. Men you marched with for years vanish overnight. Maybe they collapsed, maybe they wandered off. Maybe they finally had enough and ran headfirst into the trees just to make a different kind of ending. You don't ask, you don't want to know which of those fates is worse. And the worst part isn't the death, it's the stillness. The way the dying stop struggling, the way the living stop noticing. You pass a man sitting upright against a tree, eyes open, unmoving. You don't check if he's breathing. It wouldn't change anything. He's not in the way, and that's what matters. You stop offering water to the pale ones. Stop offering help to the limping. Not because you're cruel, but because you've learned the math. Every drop you share might cost you a few steps later. Every minute spent lifting another man is a minute someone else spends leaving you behind. It's not evil, it's arithmetic. Someone dies beside you during a rest break. No noise, no warning. Just slumps sideways and doesn't move again. The man on his other side glances down, shrugs, and shifts over so he's not touching the body. Then he eats a handful of leaves. You do the same. There are corpses on the road now, not buried, not burned, just there. Some are twisted, half sunken in mud. Others arranged almost neatly, arms crossed or heads tilted back toward the sky, like they fell asleep thinking about Rome. A few have been stripped, shields gone, armour missing, sandals already taken by someone a little less barefoot. No one talks about the dead anymore. There are too many, and they die too quietly. Once or twice a younger recruit starts crying when he finds a friend. The older soldiers don't scold him. They just wait for him to finish. Everyone grieves differently until they don't grieve at all. You used to look away when you stepped over a body. Out of shame, out of habit. Now you don't bother. The eyes are already closed or staring at nothing. You don't feel anything when your boot slips on a patch of blood. You don't flinch when a hand brushes your ankle. You're still moving, still part of the column, if it can still be called that. The line is thinner now, quieter, less cohesive. It trails through the forest like the tail end of a funeral procession that forgot where the grave is. You haven't buried anyone in days, yet you stopped trying to. Varus doesn't say much anymore. He still rides, still gestures, still nods when the officers mutter something vaguely hopeful. But his voice, once crisp and certain, is fraying. He pauses longer between sentences now, forgets names, repeats orders already given. You catch one of the centurions glancing at him, just a second too long, like he's trying to decide if this man is still in charge or just pretending to be. No one says it aloud, but you all feel it. Whatever plan he had, it's gone. He's still leading, but not forward. The sores begin as pinpricks, little irritations along your shoulders, your thighs, the small of your back, places where cloth rubs against skin, where armour presses into muscle. At first you ignore them. Everyone has aches, everyone stinks of damp wool and old blood. You tell yourself it's nothing. A few red spots, a bit of itching. They'll go away once you dry off, once you rest. You haven't been dry in weeks. The friction does its work. Slowly, methodically. Your tunic stays wet no matter how often you wring it out. The lining of your lorica bites into your skin until the skin gives way. The leather straps chafe at your shoulders until the meat underneath starts to break down. Every time you shift your pack, something raw is pressed a little further open. Every movement is a reminder that your body is no longer cooperating. The sweat doesn't help. Even in the cold you sweat, feverish, sour, constant. It collects beneath your armour, turns the inside of your greaves into a slurry of salt and grime. You don't remember the last time you washed. The streams are full of rot and ash now, and no one risks stepping out of formation to dip a hand. You scrape dirt from your skin and hope that counts as hygiene. When the infection set in, you try to convince yourself it's something else, just irritation, just pressure sores. You watch the skin darken, blister, crack. You stop looking after a while. Your calves are swelling, your toes are raw. One of your fingers has started to weep pus from a small cut you got during the last ambush. You wrap it in cloth and pray it doesn't spread. You can't afford to lose a hand. Not yet. Your back starts to ache from the constant weight. Not just tiredness, deep pain. Like your bones are grinding against each other. You try to adjust the straps. It doesn't help. The armour was never designed for this kind of march. It was built for formation warfare, for quick engagements and showy patrols through cities that had already surrendered. It was not built for rotting slowly in a forest that hates you. Around you, other men are deteriorating at different speeds. You see a man remove his helmet, and half his scalp comes with it. Another tears off his boot, and a layer of skin stays inside. No one panics, no one screams. They just keep going, wincing, limping, occasionally muttering to whatever gods still seem worth the breath. You begin to smell worse than the dead. It's a different kind of rot, sour, fungal, human, the scent of damp cloth and open wounds. You try not to breathe through your nose. It doesn't help. Your own stench clings to you like guilt. Even the insects have grown bold again, buzzing around your sores, landing on exposed flesh with lazy confidence. You slap them away without even thinking. It's as automatic now as blinking. At night when you lie down, if you lie down, you feel your own armour dig into you like a punishment. You try to sleep sitting up, but the ache in your knees keeps you awake. You try sleeping on your side, but the cold sinks through the metal and into your ribs. You try lying on your stomach, but that presses your cracked elbows into the ground. And they've started to leak now, too. Eventually, you start unbuckling things. It begins small. A strap here, a segment there. You loosen the shoulder guard to let the air in. You leave your helmet off during the march, telling yourself it's just for a while, just until you cool down. You'll put it back on if there's an attack, but there isn't. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. So you leave it off, and your neck stops itching, and you tell yourself that's a win. One morning, you wake up and realise you didn't put your chest plate back on the night before. It's still sitting by your side, crusted with mud and flecks of old leaf. You stare at it for a long moment. It used to make you feel invincible. Now it just looks heavy. You run a hand along your ribs, count the sores, count the bruises. You're not sure your body could even carry the weight anymore. You've lost so much mass that the straps no longer fit right. The metal digs deeper with every step. You've begun to hunch slightly without realising it. Your body adapting to the pressure like a tree bending away from the wind. You glance at the others and realise they're making the same choices. A few still wear full armour, mostly officers, mostly the ones who haven't admitted what's happening. But more and more are letting pieces go. First the greaves, then the bracers, now the cuirasses. You see a man carrying his helmet like a pail of water. Another has strapped his breastplate to a mule, which promptly sank into the mud an hour later and hasn't been seen since. No one says it, but the illusion is breaking. The armour is ceremonial now, dead weight, an emblem of a past that no longer exists. Protection doesn't matter when the enemy doesn't fight you head on, when the greatest threat is infection, starvation, and the forest itself. You don't need a breastplate to die in the mud. You just need time. So you stop wearing yours, you toss it beside a stump during a rest break, and keep walking. Your shoulders sag with relief. Your ribs expand slightly, like you'd forgotten how to breathe. The wind hits your tunic, and you feel the chill settle into your bones, but it's still better than carrying metal that won't save you. You keep your sword. Not because you think it'll help, but because empty hands feel worse. You think of Rome more often now, not as a place you'll return to, but as a place that may never have existed at all. The memories feel fake, too clean, too bright. Marble buildings lit by sun. Fountains that never stopped flowing. The smell of bread baking in real ovens. It feels like something you read in a myth rather than lived in. Your last letter home was written before the forest. You remember the effort it took to sound brave, to make the march sound like a proud assignment, like something honourable. You wrote about Germania like it was a frontier, not a punishment. You signed it with a flourish, as if you'd just returned from some glorious campaign. That letter never made it out. You watched the courier vanish into the trees 2 weeks ago. He hasn't returned. You wonder how long it'll take for your name to be noticed on a missing list. Not any time soon, surely. The legions were too large, the records too slow, and Varus too sure of himself. You imagine some clerk in a government office carefully recording your absence with a blot of ink, and no questions asked. You imagine the moment being as small as the life it erases. Rome feels impossibly distant now, not just in miles but in spirit. You used to think the empire was something solid, a system, a code, a machine of roads and legions and laws. Now it feels like a rumour, something that happened to other people, somewhere else, under better skies. Here in the forest, no one talks about the Senate or the Emperor. No one quotes Cicero. No one dreams of advancement. There's no ladder to climb when the floor's already gone. You remember the feel of marble under your sandals, the chatter of the forum, perfumed air drifting from bathhouses, women with coal on their eyes and coins in their hands, men boasting of victories they never fought. You used to hate all of it. Too loud, too soft, too smug. Now you'd give anything just to hear that noise again, to step into a crowd and feel anonymous. Instead, you're in a line of hollow men, half-starved, mud-slicked and silent. You haven't spoken in hours, maybe days. No one has energy for small talk. No one bothers with hope. The man beside you coughs every few steps. You don't ask if he's sick. You assume everyone is. You think of your mother, though it feels strange to do so. She's too far removed from this place to exist in it. You picture her in a small courtyard, pruning a potted fig tree that never bore fruit, humming the same tune she always hummed when her hands were busy. She'll never know what happened to you. She'll never see your body. If she hears anything at all, it'll be years from now. A passing mention, a vague report. Lost in Germania, as if that explains anything. You used to think there was honour in serving the Empire, that even if you died it would mean something. A name on a list, a stone marker, a funeral rite. Now you understand how easily the Empire forgets its own, how quickly the dead become paperwork. There is no honour here, just survival, or not. You've stopped keeping track of days, the sun rarely shows. The sky's a constant smear of grey, the same shade in morning and evening. Your internal calendar has collapsed. You measure time by how long it's been since the last ambush, since the last corpse, since the last time you thought, maybe, just maybe, we'll make it out of this. That hope is gone now, not shattered, just faded. Like old paint on a wall that no one bothered to scrub clean. Even Varus has grown quiet. He rides less now, walks more, his face thin and drawn. He still speaks of strategy, of reorganising the ranks, of rallying what's left, but his voice has the brittle edge of a man reciting orders he no longer believes in. You overhear a conversation between officers. They mention the Rhine. They mention fallback positions. One of them says, "If we can hold another week, they'll send reinforcements." You don't laugh, though you want to. Rome doesn't even know you're dying. By the time news reaches the right ears, you'll be bones. If there are any bones left to find. No reinforcements are coming. No cavalry. No glorious last stand. Just more forest. More rain. More men bleeding into the moss. You realise this with a dull certainty, like remembering something you were told long ago and simply forgot. You've been abandoned, not deliberately, not maliciously, just functionally. Rome moves slowly. The trees move faster. You reach a ridge overlooking a ravine and pause. Below you, the forest spreads, like rot, dense, indifferent, eternal. Somewhere out there you think is the place where the legions end. Maybe it's a cliff, maybe a clearing, maybe nothing at all. Just a slow thinning until the last man falls without anyone noticing. You stand for a moment, staring out, and you don't feel fear, not anymore, not even sadness, just a kind of weightless numbness, the knowledge that your death has already been written down somewhere in the ledgers. The ink is probably dry, no one is coming, and no one will remember you when you're gone. You've stopped shaving, the blade went dull weeks ago, and you've long since decided that dragging rust across your jaw isn't worth the effort. Your beard grows in patchy, uneven, itching now and then, but never enough to warrant attention. No one mentions it. Everyone's faces look the same, sunken, feral, untended, the kind of men who've been outdoors too long, and inside their own heads even longer. You've stopped praying, not in defiance, not because you think the gods aren't listening, just because you've forgotten what you used to ask for. Victory, mercy, a safe return, all of it feels too extravagant now. You wouldn't know what to do with salvation if it showed up tomorrow. Mars never came. Jupiter stayed quiet. The household gods stayed at home. Maybe that's where you should have stayed too. You've stopped hoping, not in a dramatic way. Hope didn't snap, it eroded, bit by bit, like everything else. A missing meal here, a lost comrade there. At some point, the part of you that used to look ahead just went still. You move, but you don't anticipate. You breathe, but you don't plan. Tomorrow doesn't mean anything. It's just another version of today, slightly more decayed. You still march. You still lift your boots and place them in the mud with whatever strength you can muster. You still carry your sword, though you don't expect to use it. It's symbolic now. A reminder that you used to be a soldier once, a legionnaire of Rome. You recited oaths, swore loyalty, polished your armour until it gleamed. You followed orders, marched in line, built camps with measured angles. You helped pave roads straight enough to be seen from the sky. Now you follow a trail that loops and twists like a dying snake. You don't remember the last time you saw a formation, the last time anyone called cadence. You barely recognise your own reflection in pools of water, just a shape with hollow eyes and skin stretched tight over sharp bones. What's left of a legionnaire isn't enough to be a threat. You're no longer an army, you're debris. Your hands are calloused in ways that don't make sense. Blisters from holding a sword you rarely draw, splinters from branches you use as walking sticks, cuts you don't remember getting. One of your fingernails is black and swollen and smells wrong. You keep it wrapped. You don't ask the medic to look at it. There's no medic anymore. Conversations are rare now, mostly just short functional exchanges. How far, how many, are we stopping? Anything else feels indulgent. When someone tries to tell a story from before, their voice trails off halfway through, and no one asks them to finish. Memory feels fragile. The further you reach into it, the more you risk losing your grip on the present. Once a man tried to sing. A quiet tune, something wordless and repetitive. He didn't get far. The others stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Not angry, not mocking, just confused, like they'd forgotten music existed. He stopped. He hasn't spoken since. Your body is still moving, but it's no longer entirely yours. It belongs to the march, to the pattern of mud and steps and breath and hunger. You eat when something vaguely edible appears. You drink when water is found. You rest when the column slows. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and strange, filled with images of trees that breathe and mouths filled with dirt. The trees are closer now. Or maybe you're imagining that. They lean in strange ways, like they've been watching too long and grown impatient. You hear them creak when the wind blows. You think sometimes that you understand them, that if you sat still long enough, you'd become one. Roots instead of legs, bark instead of skin. No more hunger, no more walking. One afternoon, while the group stops to rearrange supplies that no longer exist, you watch a man rise from where he'd been sitting. He doesn't speak, doesn't gather his things, just stands up, looks toward the tree line, and walks into it. Not fast, not frantic, calm, steady, like he's going somewhere familiar. No one follows him, no one calls after him. You all watch in silence, as if witnessing something sacred or obscene. He disappears after a few moments, swallowed by green and grey, a man-shaped shadow reduced to rustling leaves and memory. You don't know his name. You think you might have, once. He may have eaten next to you, shared a joke with you, lent you a bit of cloth to bind your wrist when you slipped on a slope and tore the skin. You don't remember. All you remember is the way he walked, upright, unhurried, as though answering a call no one else could hear. You wonder if he'll lie down out there, among the ferns and roots, and finally rest, or if the forest will keep him walking until his legs give out. You wonder if that's better than what's waiting for the rest of you. You don't speak of it. The others don't either. It's not something to be discussed, just understood. Some men fall behind. Some are taken. Some simply leave. You turn your eyes back to the trail, or what passes for one. You shift your pack. You keep walking. What's left of you can still do that much. You don't see him die. Hardly anyone does. The forest makes sure of that, but you hear it. Somewhere ahead of you, through the trees, through the fog, beyond the bent shapes of men who no longer stand straight, comes a single sharp cry. Not a battle shout, not a scream. Just one word, cut off halfway. Then silence. A silence that feels different from the others. Heavier, settled. Someone near you mutters, "Varus." No emotion in the voice. Not anger, not grief. Just a confirmation. A weather report. The wind has changed. The general is dead. There's no horn, no call to arms, no orders, no final rally. Just the knowledge that something central to the structure has snapped. The spine is broken. The command is gone. The man who led you into the trees, who talked of supply lines and discipline, who believed charts were stronger than terrain, is lying somewhere ahead with a blade through his gut, or his neck, or maybe nothing left of him at all. You don't ask how it happened. You don't need the details. Maybe he was ambushed. Maybe he took his own life, like the old stories say generals should. Maybe the Germans made a display of it, stringing him up like an offering to the forest. Whatever it was, it's over now. The figurehead has been toppled. The voice of the campaign has gone quiet. A few men nearby stop walking. They glance at one another, uncertain whether to wait for instruction or run. Neither happens. There's nowhere to go. The forest is all around. You've been walking in circles for days, maybe weeks. The path forward is no clearer than the one behind. And now there's no one left to pretend otherwise. You try to remember Varus's voice. You can't. You try to picture his face and it blurs in your mind. Features too smooth, too well fed, too far removed from mud and hunger. What you do remember is the horse. Always clean, always upright. Hooves never dirty for more than a moment. You wonder what happened to it. You hope someone let it go. One of the officers tries to speak. His voice cracks. He says something about regrouping, about discipline, about staying focused. No one listens. The word commander means nothing now. It's a costume without a body, a rank without a reason. The men keep walking, not out of loyalty, but because their feet haven't yet forgotten the motion. That's all that's left, muscle memory and mud. You sit down at the next break and listen for sounds. Anything. There aren't any, no birds, no horses, no orders, just wind. Just your own breath. Just the soft thud of someone's boots as they pass you without looking down. It starts to rain again, a fine, slow mist that seeps into everything. You don't bother pulling your cloak tighter. You're already wet. You've always been wet. At this point, your bones might be moss, but there's no talk of revenge. No one swears an oath. No one raises a sword and vows to finish the fight. Varus is dead, and that feels less like an event and more like a closing door. A chapter ended. The last thread holding the illusion together has been cut. There is no centre now, just edges. You see it in the others, the way their shoulders sag slightly more, the way their gazes drift, not toward the horizon, but downward, toward roots and puddles and the curve of the next incline. They've stopped looking for signs, for salvation. They've accepted what you already knew. You're not getting out of this. You used to think about survival. You used to imagine the road back, the return to camp, the meals, the bathhouses, the laughing recounting of horrors, made smaller in the telling. Now you think about the how, not the if, just the shape it will take. A spear, a rock, starvation, collapse. There are many options, all of them equally likely. You don't feel fear, not anymore. That went with the hunger, with the names, with the idea of Rome. What you feel now is something closer to gravity. A slow, constant pull toward an ending that has already begun. Your body walks, but your mind has settled somewhere else, already reclining into the earth, already folding into the silence that follows the last word. One of the men ahead of you stops and turns. He gestures vaguely in the direction you've all been heading, as if to say, "What now?" No one answers. He shrugs, wipes his nose on his sleeve, and keeps walking. You follow. Of course you do. There's nothing else to do. The direction doesn't matter. Forward is just the path of least resistance. You pass what's left of a standard, half-snapped, fabric torn, pole buried in a patch of mud like a gravestone. The emblem is unreadable. You don't stop. You don't salute. You just note it, like noting a cloud or a stone, evidence of something that used to matter. And then you feel it, that quiet final understanding. Varus is dead, the legions are dying, and you're still walking, but not for long. You understand that now. You're next. You slip in the mud. It's not dramatic. There's no cry, no stumble over a root, no cinematic fall. Your foot just doesn't lift properly. Maybe your knee gave out. Maybe your boot caught on something. You don't know. You just feel the shift, your centre of gravity tilting too far forward, and then you're down. Your body hits the ground with a dull splash. It doesn't hurt, not at first. The cold is too deep for pain. It seeps into your limbs, through your soaked tunic, through the skin that's been rubbed raw and left to fester. Your shoulder slams into something, stone maybe, or a piece of broken wood, but you're too tired to register it properly. You lie there for a moment, blinking up at the grey smear of sky through the branches. You try to rise. Your hands press into the earth. They slide. You shift your legs beneath you, but the mud clings like hands, sucking at your calves, holding you in place. Your body shakes with the effort. Your breath shortens. Your limbs forget what they're supposed to do. You try again. Slower, weaker. You don't rise. Around you, the line continues. What's left of it? Boots pass by, some close, some distant. No one stops. No one notices. You think one man looks down at you, just for a moment. Then he moves on. It doesn't bother you. You wouldn't stop for you either. You turn your head slightly and see the trees watching. They don't move. They don't whisper. They just stand there, endless, ancient, indifferent. You've come to hate them. Not because they're cruel, but because they're not. Cruelty would imply intent. These woods don't want you dead. They just don't care if you live. They never did. Your fingers dig into the mud again. They find nothing solid. You've spent your strength. You know this now. There is no rising, no final rally, no last stand. Your sword is nearby, still sheathed. You don't reach for it. What would be the point? There's no enemy in sight, just the fog, just the trees, just the weight of your body pressing down, pulled by something far older than gravity. You think about Rome one last time. Not the idea, not the empire, but the place, a street corner, a bakery, the voice of someone selling figs. You try to picture the stone under your feet, the colour of the sky there, the shape of the sun, but it's too far now. It slips through your mind like sand through cracks. All you see is the canopy above you, a net of branches, unmoving. The sounds of the column fade. You hear only yourself now, your breathing, the slow squelch of mud as you shift slightly, the distant rustle of something moving through the undergrowth. Animal or man, it doesn't matter. You know what's coming. You've known for a while. You feel the ground beneath you soak through to your spine, cold, deep. Your body is sinking. Not fast, not dramatically, just a slow settling. Like the earth is taking you back 1 inch at a time. You let it. You're too tired to fight. Then you hear it. A step too close, too deliberate, a presence. You turn your head, but you can't see who it is. There's only shadow. The shape moves closer. You don't lift your weapon. You don't speak. A spear enters your side, not violently, not even quickly, just inevitably. There is pressure, then warmth, then nothing. You don't cry out. You don't beg. There's no one to beg to. You feel your breath hitch once, then fade. Your fingers twitch, then stop. Your vision narrows. The world folds in, quiet and wet and dim. The trees remain. The mud accepts you, and Rome does not notice. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Mud-soaked, fragmented, and swallowed by trees. If you're still listening, thank you for marching through history with me, for bearing witness to a death that wasn't noble, or heroic, or even remembered. Rome buried this loss in bureaucracy and shame. But now you've walked with the men they left behind, slowly, step by step, into a forest that did not care. If you'd like early access to more histories like this one, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Amanda Lamke. Sleep well.